chasing the American dream imposes societal norms of success, neglecting individual purpose, leading to anxiety, depression, and dissatisfaction among Latino communities, worsened by discrimination, marginalization, and a stigma associated with therapy. The pursuit of the promised dream is contributing to a growing mental health crisis. Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Reigeter, and today I'm joined by a first-generation Latino dedicated to mobilizing resources to impact marginalized communities and the co-founder of BeActChange, Dr. Paul Rivera. Join us as we unravel the intricate relationship between the pursuit of the American dream and its toll on the mental well-being of Latino communities. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. I am very excited for our conversation, but before we begin, I just want to check in with you. How are you really?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. I am doing pretty good. We've been, my family and I have been on the road traveling for a little over a month now. And we've just come back to our sort of home base. We travel a lot with our kids and all of that. And so it's hard to say that we're home, but we have a home base. So we're back at our home base for the last 2 days. And I feel, I think in English, the word would be that I feel disoriented because, but it's not quite right. Disoriented, like orientation is your direction, right? Like you're disoriented and you don't know what direction to go. And that's not exactly right. My first language is Spanish, actually. And so in Spanish, we would say que estoy desubicado. And desubicado is more like I don't know where I am. Like it's this sort of unsettled feeling. It's not that I don't know where I'm going. I'm just like, where am I? kind of a thing, and it's getting used to that again and getting used to the routine. But, it's also nice to be back in my gym routine. And I've started, trying to consume as much water as I'm supposed to, which is really hard because it's an incredible amount of water that as a man, you're supposed to drink. Did you know you're supposed to drink over 100 ounces? Adult men are supposed to drink over 100 ounces a day, which is basically 3 liters of water. It's a lot of water.
That is a lot of water. And especially when you're traveling, I know for me, whenever I'm traveling, which is weekly, I never drink water. It's so bad.
It's really bad. It's really, I'm the same. I mean, we travel months at a time throughout the year, and it's not possible. One is that you're on the road and you just don't want to go to the bathroom that often. You know what I mean? But and then it's not always available. I don't always travel to places where there's easy access to clean water all the time. So it's tough. But so it's that I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to be here and doing fun stuff with you. And we're at the end of our book tour. So that's been craziness. We've been, LA, Boston, New Orleans, Miami. So, it's craziness, but it's good craziness.
You've been everywhere. I'm so excited for you that you're wrapping up your book tour. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
So the book, I'm the vice president, co-founder of our company, which is called BeActChange, which I run together with my wife. And she's listed as the main author on the book. So she's Esther Zeledon. And the book is called Creating Your Limitless Life with Chasing the American Dream Crossed Out. So it's a really interesting book. A good portion of it is her life, her memoir, her journey, which is really impactful, as an immigrant, someone who almost died as a baby, and then, all the things that she's gone through. And then really breaking away from the social molds and really the cultural expectations that are placed upon you as an immigrant or child of immigrants, and what's expected of you, and how that limits you, how that impacts you, and then sort of finding the path to break free from that and really be true to yourself and find your voice and your purpose and your authenticity and creating the path towards living it. And that's really what the book is. So half of it is sort of memoir, and then the other half is sort of the step-by-step guide. And as we walk people through, not just finding their purpose, but really how to live it. And it's one of the things that we thought was a real lack in the market at the time when we wrote the book, that there's tons of books out there. Everything says, it's really important to have a purpose and to find your purpose, but relatively few tell you how to do it. And even fewer tell you about resilience. And we focus a lot on resilience in the book, in terms of, the reality is that life gets tough sometimes, things get in the way, things happen. No matter how much you plan, life happens, whether you want it to or not, and it's not about hiding away and trying to protect yourself, but learning how to deal with those ups and downs and to keep progressing on your path towards your purpose, towards your legacy, even when times get tough.
That's so important because that's not a skill we learn. We're
No,
kind of taught that we're kind of given this idea, honestly, that life isn't as difficult and doesn't have as many curveballs as it does. And then it's like you fall, you're supposed to just get back up, and no one gives you the tools to get back up.
right.
And when you get knocked down so many times and you don't have any new tools to help you get back up, how do you get back up? There's not a lot
Exactly.
of guides, there's not a lot of support in that. So I love that you've created that kind of step by step on here's how you can start working toward what you deserve.
And it's really focused on the individual, because everybody's different and everybody's resilience tools are different because everybody's trauma is different too, so like it's anyway, just to give it away at the beginning, actually, a big part of our resilience scheme is understanding what you've gone through, how you got through it in the past, and then recognizing that those struggles that you went through are likely to struggles that are going to keep coming back. If it's depression, if it's anxiety, if it's anger, if it's whatever it is, those are the struggles that are going to keep coming back to you. And thinking about how it is that you overcome them and how you get past them in the moment, and then integrating them as part of your everyday, like integrating those tools, not just in times of crisis, but as something that keeps you balanced and keeps you focused in your everyday, and so like one example, and Esther, my wife, talks about it a lot. We've undergone this whole entrepreneurial journey in the last couple of years, building our business, our coaching business, and all of this, and publishing the book, and all of these things. And it's a very vulnerable process. You're putting yourself out there. You're talking about your feelings and what you've been through, and it's very public. Sharing your history. And there are times when she talks about times when she just wanted to quit. Like she was just like, this isn't working. It's too much. I can't do it. And those are the things that she's overcome, that imposter syndrome, that overthinking, the people pleasing, right? That everybody's going to be mad when they read my book kind of a thing, And so she talks about how one of the things that she does is that she has a folder of all of her testimonials, like a digital folder, right? Of all of her testimonials. Anytime anybody says, you guys have changed my life, or this was amazing, like she screenshots it and puts it in. And so every morning, first thing she does is open it up and read a few and remind herself, what I'm doing matters. What I'm doing is good. What I'm doing is positive. And so it's building her resilience tools into her every day. And it's huge because it reminds her why she does it and the impact that she's having. So it's a nice little way to start your day.
It's an amazing way to start your day
Yeah,
because when you're being so vulnerable and you're opening it up, not just vulnerability with yourself, which is very difficult to do, but being vulnerable with people who have opinions and who want to sometimes not be very nice, thanks to the internet and hiding behind a screen, it can be really difficult. It can be very scary. It can be really hard not
absolutely.
to internalize all of that fear or any negative comments people make. So to have something so kind of positive to start your day with, that's the true testament to how much being vulnerable, how much your story, how much what you're doing is impacting people. I think it really changes that mindset from should I be talking about this? Why am I talking about this? Do people care? Am I doing good enough? To I'm amazing. I'm helping so many people and I can't wait to
Right.
keep doing it.
Exactly. No, it's really powerful, So it's a nice little tool that I highly recommend. And
I
whatever it is that works for you, like I've tried yoga, and yoga does not work for me. Yoga is not my jam, and so much power to people for whom it is, but it's not my thing, and I actually find much more peace and resilience and centering in weightlifting. It's what I like, because it's one of the things that obligates me to clear my mind and focus. It's very much a mindfulness kind of exercise for me. So that works really well for me. So it's really about finding what works for you and when it works for you and when it is that you need it. So, yep.
Absolutely. It's what works for you and when.
Yeah.
Because what works for you for a certain emotion may not work for another one or based on the situation, and that's okay. I had this idea in the beginning when I was trying to figure out what coping tools to use, that if everyone else was doing it on TikTok, that's what you're supposed to do. And I thought something is wrong with me because I don't like to run. I like to run my mouth. I like to run my credit card, but I do not like to run outside. Not my thing. So, it was really difficult to realize
Yeah.
that that doesn't mean something's wrong with me because I don't want to go for a jog. It just meant that I need to find something else that worked for me and that helped me release the emotions. And maybe it was going for a walk. Maybe it was journaling. Maybe it was reading a book. It was so many different things based on how I was feeling, but it didn't have to be the same as everyone else. And I think that's such a
No,
misconception, is that we all have to use the same ones, but you're an individual, you're unique in your own ways, and what helps you doesn't have to help everyone else, and that's okay.
that's exactly right. I was just literally this morning, I was reading, there's an article that got published in the New York Times just a few days ago about these workplace wellness programs that, companies have them. They spend millions and millions of dollars on them to try to enhance employee wellness. And the study that just came out, it's controversial. It's only one study, but, there's a study that came out that said that basically those workplace wellness programs have almost no effect at all. And that things focused on stress management actually give the employees stress. Because, and it's exactly that, right? What they present to you in these kind of programs is often a cookie cutter set of tools that aren't necessarily going to work as an individual, right? And so it's that same line of questioning, like, what is wrong with me? Why isn't this working? Now I have stress because I can't manage my stress, and the stress management tools don't work, and it just spirals, So what was interesting, just to wrap up that thought, what was interesting is that it said that the wellness programs that actually do have an impact is when the employees are given the option to do charity or volunteer work, which I thought was fascinating. And it's something that I've thought about and talked about for quite a while, which that I think a lot of things that have to do with depression and anxiety and just sort of lack of fulfillment often comes down to people feeling that they lack connection and community. And so I think things like charity work and volunteer work, which open that option for people to engage in things that inherently are community and connecting with others, I think it makes perfect sense to me that that's something that can really enhance your wellness as a person.
I was just talking about this with a conference that's focused on employee experience. They sent me their agenda and were like, what are your thoughts? And my first thought was, there's so many tools on, like, for the employers, do A, B, C, and that will fix everything. But I was like,
Right.
there's nothing about corporate social responsibility and community service within the organization, volunteering. I was like, people are a lot more likely to feel happy at work when they feel connected to something, when they
Yeah,
feel their work has meaning. So if we're doing something where we're giving back, where it shows that we're connecting in a way that we connect with each other and connect with the community around us, I'm a lot more likely to show up to work with some kind of positive feeling about what I'm doing. That's going to make me feel better and hopefully make me more productive. And
exactly.
a lot of people don't think about that in business, which blows my mind because we all just want to feel connected at the end of the day. But
Exactly.
going back to the topic of this podcast episode, the title of the book, we crossed out American Dream. So why did you cross out American Dream?
Okay. So here's how it goes. Okay. So when you think about the American dream, like sort of the definition of the American dream, is that it's this ideal that in a land of equal opportunity, through hard work, you can achieve your highest aspirations. That's like the textbook definition, right? That it's this idea that it's a place of equal opportunity, that hard work is really all it takes, and that through that you achieve your highest aspirations. Okay. It's a beautiful thing. I'm actually calling you from the Dominican Republic. which is sort of my semi home base. And, I've lived outside of the United States for over a decade now, and I've traveled all over the world and, for both for work and for pleasure. And you find that, for one, this idea of the American dream it's the name, but it's really something that applies all over the place. Any place that you go to where there's a lot of immigration, there are people who have this idea that wherever they are, that there isn't opportunity, that no matter how hard I work, I'm not going to get ahead. And so I'm going to look for something else, right? So you see so many millions and millions of people who have this dream that they want to come to this land of equal opportunity. All they got to do is work hard because I got no money, and so that's what's going to help me reach my highest aspirations. Well, reality is different from the ideal, right? So one is that opportunity is not equal, right? And we can talk about systemic racism, we can talk about all sorts of things, but that's already the playing field isn't necessarily equal. The second piece, though, is that the ideal is that you can achieve your highest aspirations, and I think we forget that the definition is it's not about the check marks that the American dream has become. And so that's a lot of what we talk about, that in practice, the American dream has become this series of check marks in a lot of ways. Like, do you have, when you get married, when do you have kids? What kind of job do you have? Have you bought a house? And have you done all those things by a certain age, right? So there's a fixed set of indicators and check marks, and there's a timeline attached to it. And that's a tremendous amount of stress. It's a tremendous amount of stress because, one, those things are really tough to achieve. They're really tough to achieve authentically. And that's sort of the biggest question. Are those the things that I wanted in the first place? I was born and raised in the United States, and I choose to live outside of the United States. I think that I come closer to my American dream outside of the US than I do there, So, and then the other side of it is that I think that it is limiting. I think that the American dream, like, even if you've achieved it, and I can say this because I have in my past had all those things. I've had the job, the title, the money, the house that my job paid for, the private school that my job paid for my kids, and all of that. And I was absolutely miserable. So you get painted all of these images of what the American dream is and what it should be and what it could be, only to achieve it and then realize that in a lot of ways it feels really empty, right? So there's two sides to it. One is that there are millions and millions, and I speak a lot specifically to the Latino population in the United States. There's millions and millions of Latinos who are struggling to move up in that American dream. And then there's those that reach it only to find that it was pretty hollow at the end, So and that this sort of spirals out to the mental health aspects of it, So one is that there's so much hope, right? I talked about how, immigrants and immigrant families see so much hope in coming to this, right? And then there's this belief in hard work. The statistic is that they did a survey several years ago, and 94% of Latinos in the United States said that in order to achieve the American dream, basically all you need is hard work. So there's a huge belief in hard work. And then the idea that hard work will lead to success, and that success by extension leads to satisfaction. And I don't know how it is in other communities, in other cultures, because at least in the Latino culture, we rarely talk about happiness or fulfillment or anything like that. So it's more about satisfaction. Like, success will lead me to being okay, But go ahead.
I was going to say on that note, I had this conversation recently with older family members. My grandparents came here from Italy, and they had no money when they came to America, and they ended up building up a very, very nice life for themselves. And I tried to explain to them that the American dream that they knew back in 1950s is not realistic in today's world anymore.
No.
You can't move to this country with $63 in your pocket and then suddenly be able to buy a bunch of land, build up shopping centers, sell those shopping centers, make all this money, and do all these things that hard work gave you the opportunity to do. because back then everything wasn't built up. There weren't a million jobs with a million people working in a million jobs, right? There wasn't as high of inflation. We have all these other obstacles and barriers. And I think that when you're talking about the American dream, what came up for me is it's so outdated in this world of 1950s, 1960s, when the American dream and this idea that hard work solves everything was a lot more reasonable and realistic than in today's world where you're going into debt just trying to go to school so that someone will hire you to get a job.
Yeah. And I would say that there's even another layer to it where in those days it was definitely more within your reach to achieve those sort of markers of the American dream. But one of the things that that rarely gets talked about, for example, is the extent of high functioning alcoholism that existed during those times. Everyone was a smoker. The amount of gender-based violence that was pervasive in society at that point, that doesn't get talked about, and so even though they could achieve those things, I would argue that there was still a great deal of unhappiness, of dissatisfaction, of things that kind of got covered up because, well, you have a good job, you have a house, so those are the things that just come with the territory, and I still think it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely. And it's so true. You have the house, you have the job, you're married, you have kids, like you have these checkpoints. So your life must be perfect. You must be
Exactly.
happy. And then when you get there, you have all these things and those symptoms or feelings of depression, anxiety creep up. It can feel really difficult because you're like, well, I have everything I'm supposed to have. Well, how do I feel this way? What's wrong with me? And it's an internalization instead of a understanding and awareness that reaching all these little checkpoints and milestones isn't what makes you feel good inside. And that's okay. And that's normal.
And as I think about it, I think about my dad a lot. So my dad's from El Salvador. My mom is from Mexico. My dad's from El Salvador. They met in the US. And my dad always talked about wanting me to be an engineer. Like that was their dream for me, that they wanted me to be an engineer. It was never my thing. And I'm glad I didn't go that way. But I kind of realized that really that was his dream. That was always his dream, and we talk about, why he came to the United States and, why that happened and how it happened and hypothesizing about what could have happened had he stayed in his country, and how his life would have been different and things like that. And you kind of realize that, for one, children inherit their parents' broken dreams a lot, so that gets passed on for sure. And that's a weight that you carry as a child. And I think that much more so as a child of immigrants who left their country, left everything, and came here to start over ostensibly for us, what I mean? To have a better opportunity for us. But you realize that they paid a heavy price in a lot of ways because they had to let go of some of the things that were their dreams, that were their purpose, and that's something that we don't talk about very often at all. And we don't think about so much when, especially as sort of like the first gen kids like me, we don't think that much about what our parents left behind and what their dreams were because we've only seen them in this context, And so, when I think about the American dream and sort of reshaping it somehow, for me, it's really important that it starts with connecting with your purpose as an individual. And I've been, as I said, I've been everywhere in the world. I've been to over 115 countries. I've met thousands and thousands and thousands of people from country presidents to fishermen and farmers and, everybody in between. And I firmly, strongly in my core and in my heart believe that everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a reason why they're here. And I believe that everyone should have the right to try to live out that purpose, And so for me, what's missing in the American dream as we normally talk about it is it's that connection to your purpose, recognizing that each person has uniqueness and unique value to contribute. And so much of the work that I do is helping people, one, understand what that purpose is for themselves, and then teaching people how to align their actions to that purpose. And that alignment is hugely important, right? Because when you understand who you are and where you're coming from, and then you see that your actions are supporting that inner core in you, it's a great, strong feeling that you can build up inside you. That's why our book is called Creating Your Limitless Life, because when you feel that you are aligned that way, you feel like you can fly, and that's how I want everyone to feel. And so for me, like when I think about the American dream and really redefining the American dream, for me, it's especially as I think about like Latino and immigrant communities, and I know that that's my lens, but I think a lot about like reshaping the dream to be thinking about one where we're enabling individuals to uplift their community through their purpose-driven action and the resilience tools to stay on that path, which is sort of the summary of our book in a lot of ways, right? And I mentioned that, but to me, that's the American dream, right? When you have the ability to live out your purpose, to keep going even when times get tough, and that through that you make your community stronger, and that's the other thing. I think that the American dream, as we talk about it now, is very individualistic, right? It's about my wealth and what have I gathered. It's so easy to be so caught up in my accumulation that I forget about community, that I forget about the environment, I forget about whatever it is, And I think that a true American dream is one where you're true to yourself, and that by becoming the best you that you can be, you actually make your community, your state, your country, your world a better place.
Absolutely. I think one of the most powerful things you can do in your life is figure out who you are and who you want to be, and then chase after that in the most authentic way.
Yeah,
It's this, like you said, idea that you have to have so much money and have this job, and it's just going through the motions. And so many people don't even know what would make them happy. They have no idea what would make them happy. They have
they've
no
never
idea,
been asked.
right? And they don't know why they do what they do. They just, because that's what I was taught, that's what I was told. And when you feel so disconnected from yourself, that can be really difficult to have any support within your mental health. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the only person you have is you. You always have yourself. And if you don't know who you are and you don't feel comfortable and safe within who you are, that can really make it difficult when those dark days come.
And that's really important. When we think about the sort of mental health side of things, the statistic that I read was that 4 million Latinos every year undergo an extreme depressive episode. It's a ton of people, 4 million Latinos every year. And I'm not a psychologist, but I understand that an extreme depressive episode is not just I feel sad or I'm having a bad day, but it's to the point where I'm struggling to function, And when you ask Latinos, when they were asked, about sort of the root of those depressive feelings, it can be encapsulated as saying that they feel like they're not reaching those check marks of the American dream, right? They feel that they're not making enough money, they're not contributing enough to their families, that they're not that they're not moving along as they should be, and that causes that stress, that depression, to the point where Latinos and Latinos in a particular sort of younger age group have greater suicidal ideation than their peer groups. So it's not just that they feel bad about it, but they feel bad about it to the point where they're not sure that they can keep going along that path, And then add to that Latinos are some of the least likely to actually seek professional help for these things, and it's just a spiraling thing, and it's really hard for me to see it in my own community, and so I do everything I can to try to change that narrative, and some of it is really hard because it's so heavily culturally ingrained. There's the Latino community is definitely a very sort of macho based community in a lot of ways, right? So anything like that is just weakness, and there's nothing worse than weakness. If you follow any of the the Latino things on Instagram, there's so many jokes about the chancla culture, which is chanclas or flip flops, right? And there's so much fame about, the Latina mom who smacks you with the flip flop or throws it at you and just sort of, like tries to smack some sense back into you. And it's funny. It's meant to be funny, but the truth is that that's what happens. That's the message that we're given, and that's what we carry with us. And it's harmful, that this idea that it's not okay to seek help, that you just sort of suck it up and keep going. Don't be such a baby, kind of a thing, or that you just don't talk about it, right? Your problems stay inside the house. You don't share what's going on because God forbid what others might say, so there's a whole sort of conversation that needs to adjust, that needs to be modified for us really to move forward as a community in a much more positive direction. I talk a lot about, for example, thinking like you're at Christmas, you're at Easter, you're at dinner with the family, and what does the conversation sound like? If the conversation is, oh, you look like you've gained a couple pounds, or where's your boyfriend, or why haven't you had kids yet, right? All of those things are really unhelpful. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much more helpful. And it seems strange at first to ask things like this, but what about things like have a conversation about, hey, what's your highest aspiration? What do you dream about? And then how can I help you with that? And then having in your mindset of one, not being judgmental about it, and like, I know this isn't just a Latino thing. Have you ever seen the movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Yes.
Right. And you remember, I don't know, this may be a detail that only I picked up on, you know what I mean? But you remember that there's the main character and she has the brother, and the brother is always trying to draw a new menu for the restaurant. And the dad keeps blowing him off. And he's, his passion, he loves art, and he wants to draw, and this is how he wants to contribute. And he keeps getting blown off. Like, he keeps getting judged for it. That's stupid. It's just a hobby, whatever it is. We see that in the Latino community too, right? That there's a tendency to, when I have a love, when I have a passion, when I have a dream that falls outside of what we've been told is the norm. This is the set of things that Latinos do. So if you're going outside of that, that's not okay. And we need to have that conversation, that part of support is being non-judgmental and accepting that everyone has uniqueness, everyone has value, and that allowing people to really live out that purpose and explore it is how they're going to be the greatest possible contribution to themselves, to their family, and to their community.
I have so many things to say to that because it is so true. But I want to do a PSA to family members at the holidays, at the table. Stop asking people why they don't have kids, why they don't have a dream job. Let's change that, please. So many times I'm just like, goodbye, gotta go.
No, and you know what? That is a great strategy. That is a great strategy. There's a whole model of reaction and response that's called exit, voice, and loyalty. Right? Exit, voice, and loyalty. And when you're confronted with an adversarial situation like that, you have the choice to either vocalize and say that this is not acceptable. You have the choice to go along with it, and that's loyalty, or you have the choice to just get up and walk away, and that's exit. And sometimes exit is your best friend. You don't have to be there. Yeah.
It really is. But I want to go back to what you said about the culture in the Latino community. I took a multicultural counseling class, and I remember this research article we read. And one of the big things was, so it's so hard to reach out for help because it's so ingrained in the culture that, this is a conversation that we don't even want to have at home, but it's definitely
Right.
not leaving the house. You
Right.
have to be strong. You have to just get through it. But then there's this added layer of when a lot of people finally do reach out for help, a big reason people don't maintain help is one, a language barrier, right? When English isn't your first language, and sometimes you just don't have the words to express what you're feeling
Yeah.
in English,
Yeah.
and the therapist can't relate, and there's that barrier. Another big thing was the way that different cultures interact and the way that someone may respond to, I'm finally opening up for the first time and I'm saying this, and I've never said it before out loud. And if a therapist doesn't respond with the right kind of empathy and compassion and understand where someone's coming from in their culture, it can completely impact them ever reaching out for help and coming back. And I think that's just such an important component to talk about is not only is it so difficult to finally reach out for help and find a therapist who's available, but therapists need to be aware and need to be cognizant of other cultures, other communities, and how they can be beneficial and how they can be supportive. And if you don't know anything about a community, like look into it, research. You have the internet, you have books, you have podcasts. There are things you can do. You can even ask your client a question in a respectful way and not in a you need to educate me, but how can I best learn and support you? So I think that's just such another important piece is so many people. I mean, you're saying 4 million Latinos are having these severe depressive episodes. And it's so easy for people listening to probably go, well, why aren't they reaching out for help? They
Right.
should just reach out for help. The stigma is not what it used to be. But the reality of it is the stigma still very much exists within the communities and within family settings. And then when you don't have therapists who are culturally competent, who understand and are willing to work with someone and to show up in the way they need, that's also an added barrier.
That's right. I would agree 100% with everything you just said. I'm still trying to get my mom to come, to sit with a therapist for a while because I think there's a lot of stuff she should unpack. But and it's fascinating. As I said, I spend a lot of time in Latin America, and my therapist is in Latin America, and I would say that there's also a very different approach to therapy in Latin America versus the United States. And something for people to think about, I guess. I think that in the US, a lot of therapy is very gentle and very question based, and trying to bring the person around to their awareness and understanding. And I completely understand the value of that. However, our culture is oftentimes a bit more blunt. And sometimes people respond to that, so I know that my therapist, and I really appreciate it when she does this. I'm telling her about some situation and she will look me dead in the eye and say, well, you really messed up there. And I'm like, oh, dang, I knew it, but it doesn't leave me hanging. And I appreciate that. There's a directness that I think is really useful. That I had never experienced in lots of times trying therapy in the US. So something to think about. And it's part of that sensitivity. It's not always that softer is better, and sometimes a direct approach is better, and things along those lines. It's been a really interesting journey, even explaining to my family that I go to therapy. That idea, and they're like, well. They see me as a super high achiever. I have a PhD, I've done all these things. And they're like, well, your life is great. What's wrong? And I'm like, for one, it's not even just that something may or may not be wrong. It's that this is part of it's my spiritual hygiene. This is something that I need to do to cleanse myself of, the things that are weighing on me. Sometimes it's not even about fixing a problem. This is just part of my health. Just like I exercise, I do this too, and it's really having that level of conversations with our family members. And that's another big thing, and this takes, it takes some guts and some gumption a little bit, but you kind of have to be the person who's willing to start having those conversations, sharing how you feel, sharing the things that you do. And I mean, your podcast is called Normalizing the Conversation, right? And that's really what this is about. It's really normalizing this idea that sometimes you need help. I don't always feel great, that I don't always like what you're doing or what you're saying. And it's okay. We can have a disagreement about it. We can talk about it. I think there's a lot of ways that society could be made better off, if we were so much more willing to openly talk about the things that are bothering us.
Communicate in a respectful way, which means
Absolutely.
listening and talking. It's not just talking. Listening
That's right.
is key. But I love the way that you kind of explain it with your family. Because for me, when my family's like, your life is perfect, why do you need therapy? I'm like, because you think my life is perfect.
Exactly.
I'm like, because you think that all the time, everything's great. And you don't see a lot of things. Maybe like the negative thoughts in my brain are keeping me up till 2 a.m. because inflation is so high. Am I ever going to get a job that can support the cost of living? How about that? So I'm a lot more, I guess, blunt in that sense, where I'm like, you love you parents if you're listening. Probably not, but if you are, Love you guys.
I think it's interesting also that I think people tend to talk about mental health in a very static way. Like it's a goal. I've reached it and now I'm good. You know what I mean? And the reality is that every day is different. Every day you wake up, every day, like the world is dynamic, so every day something is going to push you in one direction or another. And every day you have to be making those adjustments and reaccommodating yourself to the new reality you wake up to all the time. And it's work every day, and it's something that you can't just, like, people talk about the destination, and it's not a destination. It's a direction, but it's something that you have to keep plugging away at all the time to not let yourself go too far off the rails, and it's really easy to let things go too long and to justify to yourself why it's not worth doing. And I saw that you have a workbook coming out soon, which I think I'm excited to take a look at it, because I think it's going to be great. But I know that you have a section there on negative thoughts, and the negative thoughts can so quickly run away from you. I have my oldest child has gone through a couple of suicide attempts, and I'm glad that's behind them now. But it's the sort of thing that really makes you think, about all the things that we could be doing and all the different conversations that we could be having to not let our loved ones get to that point. It's impossible to not think about, not so much what could I have done or what could I have said, but how could I have created a different environment in which that person felt safe enough to tell me beforehand what was happening, or how could I have created the space for them to feel okay saying, you know what, I don't feel good. Something's not right. And maybe I can't pinpoint it. And, you want to provide all the support you can. And it's not a matter of not enough love or not enough energy. It's just, I can't know if I haven't created that space, and I think it's supremely important for us to be able to start having a different kind of conversation.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big things I'm sorry you've gone through that with your kid. I know that for my parents going through that with me, it's not easy, especially as a parent. And one conversation that we've had is there's not enough conversation on what's kind of normal and what's a warning sign. I'm using the word normal like very loosely. But what is a typical amount of negative thoughts that make you kind of question something and then work towards something? And what is negative thoughts that are ruminating through your brain that you can't spin into any form of encouragement, that are impacting your self-esteem, impacting your ability to function and your desire to survive? There's not enough conversation there's this idea, trying to say this so correctly, there's this idea that, like everyone has negative thoughts. If you've never thought about suicide, you're not human. Someone said that to me recently, and I'm like, well, there's a difference between I'm just done with everything today, and I have an intention and plan to end my life.
Right.
But when we're not specifying, we're not talking about it, we're not educating people on it's okay to reach out for help no matter where you are. But if you're at this point, you really should reach out for help, and there is support available, and it doesn't have to feel like this. It does not have to feel like this. So beyond creating that environment to want to talk about, creating that piece of awareness that this is when you really, really have to reach out for help. And this is if you want to, let's talk about it. I'm here.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. There's a difference between I'm in crisis now and I'm on that path, and it's a different conversation. And I mean, in either case, I think we as a community, as parents, as Latinos, as whoever we are, have to take on that responsibility, that we need to start creating those spaces. It's impossible not to see that there's an increasing mental health crisis happening out there, and we can't just let it we can't just let it continue. It's harming our children. It's harming our parents. It's harming us, and we have the power and the energy and the means to do something about it. And I think it's incumbent upon us to do so.
Absolutely. As we're wrapping up, there's one thing we talked about earlier, which was purpose, finding your purpose. What is a piece of advice you can give to someone who's listening to this and they're just going through the motions and doing what's expected of them, what they were told they have to do, and now they've realized, I don't know what my purpose is. What
Yeah.
advice would you have for them to start figuring that out?
I would say that there's a series of questions that you need to ask yourself, and they're different and varied, but they give you clues as to sort of who you are. Okay, so one of them, and here's what I want to emphasize from the beginning. I think there's way too much out there that says that your purpose is your passion, and I think it's so much more than that. So for one, you do need to think about what is it that you like? What are the things that you like? And that's important. Okay. But other things are, for example, I love to ask people the question about to think about who were their childhood heroes. Who was your childhood hero? And it's actually for a lot of people, a really tough question to answer. And a lot of people default to saying it's like one of their parents or a grandparent or something like that. And I always push people a little bit deeper than that. Here's mine. I will tell you mine. And my gosh, you might be too young to know who this person is, but my childhood hero was Jacques Cousteau. Do you know who Jacques Cousteau is?
I know the name because of an episode of Friends.
Okay, so that's amazing. I love that. So Jacques Cousteau was a diver. He was basically the inventor of scuba. And when I was growing up, he had his own TV show where he had his boat and his crew. And they would go around the world, sail around the world, and they would go diving. And so, I mean, he's literally the inventor of scuba. He's this French guy. I loved the show. It was only on, it was once a week, and I loved it and I never missed it. And then as part of this process, right, I start unpacking why it is that he was my hero, and it doesn't make any sense. He was this really skinny, older French guy, kind of goofy looking, whatever. And then I realized that I loved that he always looked so confident and so calm. So he was the guy that, they're out at sea, stuff goes wrong, and he always was like, okay, well, a challenge has come up. Let's see how we can solve it, and so that calm confidence I loved. And then I loved how he would, when he was on shore, when he was meeting people, how he treated people. I loved that, wherever he went, he was there and he was so interested in them and respectful and sharing their food and having a drink with them and talking to them about their lives and all of that. And I loved that, right? That for one, that he had this wanderlust, that he wanted to see the world, that he wanted to connect with people, and so those are the things that I love, right? It makes sense. I travel all over the place. I talk to people, all of these things. And so he was my hero, right? And so one of the things that I really start people with when they're asking themselves about their purpose is connecting to that and the characteristics of that person, right? So those are the characteristics you admire. That tells you something about your values, right? And your principles and the things that are at your center and why they're meaningful to you. And then it's a series of other questions. And you can, I would point people to our book if they want all of them, but it's things like, what do you want people to seek you for, right? So you're sitting at home, your phone rings, you pick it up. It's a close friend who says, Paul, I need your help. And the question is, when that happens, what do you want them to be asking you for help for, right? Is it, I need your help booking an appointment for the doctor? Probably not. Is it because I need your help? In my case, people call me all the time for help with resumes and interviews. And I like that, right? I like when people call me for these things because I love helping people and helping them get ahead and that sort of thing. However, like somebody like my wife, who's been called for that sort of thing 1,000 times, hates it. She does not want to be called for that, right? She wants to be called for things like, I'm struggling with my purpose or my direction or my next move, and much more strategic things and that sort of stuff. Everybody wants to be sought for something different, right? And that tells you something about the value that you bring and how it is that you solve problems and the kind of problems that you want to solve, right? And so you can see, you start piecing together this puzzle, and it's all sorts of things. And it's about asking your questions about your resilience toolkit and what are the things that help me along that path. What are the things that I have overcome, and thinking about some of those darker things that you feel have held you back and have shaped you in some way. And then I think it's really important also to talk about like this legacy exercise and how it is that you want to be remembered. If for some reason you were gone today and your funeral happened today, what would people say? And are you satisfied with that? And thinking about then, if you're not satisfied with that, what would you want them to say? How would you want to be remembered? And then having an understanding of sort of your A to B. What's that gap in your life, and how it is that you can start building that out. So purpose is this multifaceted thing that encompasses, all sorts of things like that. Your skills, your resilience, your past, your loves, and all of that. And it's really starting to piece that together into something that makes sense to you, and that you can then put forward into an actionable plan.
To make your plan, to answer these questions, to get more questions, make sure you check out the book. I do want to say that an exercise I've been doing with myself a lot lately is similar to the first question. And it's who I looked up to growing up and who I look up to now, and what's changed, what do they have in common, and what characteristics do I hope that I have from each. And the person I looked up to growing up was Oprah. I just loved coming home from school. Oprah would be on the TV and I would just sit there, and I loved the way she spoke. You just felt, I don't know if I even remember anything she said. I just always felt like so empowered. And it probably never related to me because I was like 8 years old. But I felt so just excited and empowered by her voice. And I loved that. And now one of my favorite people in the world, I'm so lucky she's one of my friends. I'm like, I want to be like you in every way, shape, and form. And what I love about her is she's always just there, right? No matter when I need someone, she's there. I can call her in the middle of the night, she's going to answer. If she's near me, she'll stay up all night and just not let me feel alone in those hard times. And what I want to be and what I want to do is I want to be a source of comfort for people and a source of inspiration, have that voice that makes people feel empowered, inspired, and not alone. And I didn't realize that the people I looked up to embodied different traits from that. And it helps me feel not like I want to copy them and be them and mimic them, but I have something to aspire to in a sense of tangible takeaways from each person. And it helps keep me on my purpose and see, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to Oprah level, but let's pretend we're going to manifest it. But I have something to reach for in both ways. So I love that exercise because that's kind of how I've been connecting to my purpose in a way. But
I think it's amazing too, because it gives you it gives you a lens to how you see your friends and the people around you and your family. And I think it gives you like a certain amount of empathy for them, because you understand what it is that they're coming from and how they contribute to your life and how you contribute to theirs. And I think it's a really nice exercise.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining me today. If someone wants to purchase the book, connect with you, learn more, how can they do that?
Okay, so the book is called Creating Your Limitless Life. It's available on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. It's worth saying that we have purposely priced the Kindle version of the book at 99 cents. And there's an accompanying workbook also. That's also 99 cents. And that is not a promotional price. That's the price for the Kindle version. And we've done this, really consciously wanting to make sure that access to this kind of information isn't a budget issue. You know what I mean? If you need this kind of thing, you can get it for $1 from us. And that's something that we've done very purposefully. You can grab it on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. We have a website called BeActChange.com. We're on Instagram, be.act.change. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm there as Dr. Paul Rivera.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.